Okay, cool. So for today, we're gonna be covering JavaScript, but before that, we're gonna do some icebreaker activities and stuff. But before that, these are the slides for today. It will have the links for our icebreaker as well. So if you could just go on that, I'll give everyone like a minute just to go on to our slides. Okay. And once you have the slides, can you give me like a thumbs up or something? Okay. Half a minute more, maybe. Can you raise your hand if you still need the link, by the way? Okay, I think everyone's good. So if not, you can ask someone else at the table for the link. So what we're gonna do is start off with an icebreaker. So you'll give me basically doing the typeracer game that we have. So if you go on to that slide right here, the slide number 4, fastest typist in the West. The title was created by Alexi right here. Very original, completely original. So if you just go on our website, what you're gonna do is kind of compete within your tables. So maybe like half, like the left side versus the right side. So just try to type the fastest, compare your scores, and just have fun, basically. And I'll go back to the slides. Let's do this for like 5 minutes. 7 minutes. Yeah, I got 330. Okay, can you refresh? Okay, let's kind of go around what's the highest level. So starting off at this people, what's the highest one? Okay, I hope everyone had fun with that. But now let's get started with our content for today. Okay, so by the way, if you go on our hack school, if you go on our hack.acmucsd.com, the site we've created, you will be able to see all the hack school content. So if you go on our site and then hack school, just click on hack school over here. Then you'll see our chapters for hack school. You can follow along, or also like, oh yeah, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so for our hack school content, these are our chapters, so you can learn what hack school is, and then like for our last week's HTML and CSS concepts, you can go here, read more about it. We have some different examples and stuff. So if you were confused, go here. We also have office hours on Discord, different times. There's a calendar that was shared. So if we're having office hours and you feel confused about any of the topics presented so far, just come to us and we'll answer your questions. Okay. And again, this is our GitHub. You all should have this already. Okay. And obviously the spot. Okay. So going on to the topic for today, we're covering JavaScript. So we'll start off with variables, types, and operators. Then talk about objects, then loops, arrays, functions, then callbacks, promises, async, await, Node.js, and DOM. You'll learn what everything is pretty soon. Okay, so for comments, the basic thing in programming languages, right? You always comment your code, right? At least I hope you do. So this is in JavaScript, this is how you would comment. So sometimes in Python, I know you have the number sign, and so this kind of like Java, just like the two lines, the two slashes, that's a single line comment, and then the slash and then the star. You can start it and then close it wherever you want. That's like the multi-line comments. Any quick questions on that? No? Okay, cool. And then semicolons, right? A lot of programming languages tend to have semicolons. Some don't, like Python doesn't, right? But Java does, C++ does too, right? So JavaScript, semicolons, it's technically optional, but highly recommended. It's just a good habit to end things with a semicolon just because it makes it easier to read your code. So this is just a meme that we have. Do I need a semicolon? C++ is like, yes. Python's like, no. You're also like, yeah, but no. So any questions? Yep, okay. So now what we're gonna do is talk about console.log. So if you've ever just opened up some site, right? Even if it's just Google, and then you right click and do inspect. And then you see all of this, right? These are things called dev tools. Inside that, you have this thing called console. Over here, you can basically log stuff. We'll be seeing console.log in a lot of our code today that you'll see, but just an introduction. So you can do console.log over here, and then I'll just say, welcome to hacks. Okay, sorry. Welcome to Hack School. And then if I press enter, what do you think will be printed? Or what will you think will happen when I press enter? Anyone? Yes. Yeah. So if I press enter, it's just gonna be like welcome to Hack School with the two exclamations. So this is the way, like when you code the site and you want to test someone like clicks a button, then it's like a button clicked or something, you just want to log that, then you could log that and you could see in this console thing in your dev tools. This is like helps you debug when you're actually running the site on the server. So similarly, if it was like console.log this.session, this is a session, and then the +2. This is just JavaScript syntax. So the string plus an integer, it basically makes it a string. So what you get is this is session 2. And again, for numbers, if it's just a number 1 and the number 2, it's just an integer 3. 1 plus 2 is 3. So any questions on that? Or how to get to the console? No? Okay, cool. Then we'll go into variables. So there are 3 ways you can declare variables. One of the way is let. This is used for variables that can change in value. So you can let cur equals 5 right now, but then later on in your code, you can change the value of cur to, let's say 10 or whatever number you want to update it to. And const, this is this constant, it's like pi is 3.14, right? You won't change it later on in your code. And var is just used to declare variables. So this thing, ES6 is like the newer version. Before you could just literally do anything. This it was var, but now the preference is like let or const. Any questions on the 3 ways you can declare variables? You'll see more examples, but yes. Yeah, var was like mainly it's just used to declare a variable. Like it can be any type, but it was used before like the newer version. So it's just kind of old one. Like sometimes people might still use var. So in case you see that, you don't be confused. But typically people use let now. It's just a way to declare a variable. Any other questions? Okay, cool. And then so for var, the what we have is there's some code, but var is basically this thing called globally and locally scoped. What that means is, for example, we have a var greeter. That's just a variable that we call it greeter, and we set it to the string hey. So that's globally scoped. Why? Because it can be used later down in the code instead of like just in the function itself. You know, that's something it's not locally scoped. Whereas hello, the var hello, that is locally scoped. What that means is you can't use hello outside of that function because you've only defined the variable hello inside the thing called new function. So if you had code inside this new function, like more stuff, then you can use hello and change it, or you can do hello plus some other string to combine it, concatenate the strings or whatever. But you over here, if you try to use it outside of the function, so for this line console.log hello, it's going to give you an error because hello is not defined over there. it's only locally scoped. Whereas for greeter, since it's globally scoped, it's defined outside, right? You can access greeter. So if you did console.log greeter, then it's going to return what the string is, which is hey for greeter. Any questions for that part? No? Okay. So then the second part, right? We're updating var, the variable greeter, right? So you're just setting it to hi now. So now the greeter is no longer going to be hey, it's going to be hi. So after this line, whenever you call greeter, it's going to be hi. So if you did console.log greeter over here, it's going to print out hi, not hey anymore, because you've updated it. Then if you did greeter, you can update it again. Like you don't have to do var again. You can just update it just without calling var because it's globally scoped. And that's what var lets you do. You can change it. So greeter is hey again now. So now if you call greeter after that line, what's going to happen is greeter is now hey again. So over here, if you did console.log greeter, is going to print hey again. Any questions on any part of this code? No? Okay. So then what is let? Let is block scoped, which basically means it can be updated, but it can be redeclared. So over here, you redeclared greeter, right? In this line right here, you redeclared it because you called var greeter and then you gave it a new value. But let, you can't redo that. But you can't update it. You just can't redeclare it. So is that part kind of clear? Okay, cool. So let's go through this code. So let is let greeting equal say hi. So we're setting the variable greeting to the string say hi. And then we're doing let greeting equals say hello instead. So this part gives you an error because you can't redeclare it. You can't do let greeting and then give it a new value. So this gives you an error, which is like the type identifier. This what it would literally print if you try to execute these two lines of code. It would print out error. Identifier greeting has already been declared. And then, yes.
In the previous slide, you said that net is used for variables that can change about it.
Yeah. So let you can update it, but you can't redeclare it. This is redeclaring it by because you're saying let greeting again. So you're using the same variable name, but you're it's essentially like trying to create two variables kind of thing because you're doing let in front of it. But if it was just greeting equals say hello again, it would have been updated. But you can't redeclare it. Is that clear? Okay. Yeah, so over here, if true, then so if it's gonna be true, right? So it just goes inside that if condition, and then you're trying to do like greeting equals say hello again. This one, it does print say hello instead because this is like globally scope now. It's like a different scope. This was still part of global scope outside globally, and then this is a local scope. So over here, you can update it. And then if you console.log outside, because the greeting was updated to say hello instead locally, that say hello instead is only inside that if condition. It's only local. But so when you go outside of that in condition and you go to the last line of code that we have where we're trying to log greeting, it's gonna still say hi, which is the first thing, which was the value set when we globally declared it. So any questions about any part of this code or like global versus local? No? Okay. And then the third type of way, which is const. Const is like block scoped again. Basically kind of like let, right? So you have const greeting set to say hi. Then you're doing greeting equals hello. You're updating it. You're not redeclaring it. So, but the thing is over here for const, it gives you an error of assignment to constant variable because it's constant. You can't update it. It cannot be updated. That's the difference between let var versus const. Const is just constant. You can't update the value later on. Whatever you set it, that's what it is. And if you want to update, you just change the first line where you defined it the first time. You can't update it later on again. So the difference is var, let, you can update it. Const, you can't update it or declare. Okay, so over here, when you try to do greeting equals hello, it gives you an error. But then if you do const greeting hey, this gives you a different type of error. It says identifier, just like it was with the let about being declared. So this is identifier versus assignment. Is the difference between the error clear to everyone? If you have any questions, just raise your hand. No? Okay. So then we have this greet constant variable. So for greet, we have message being say hi, and the times is 4. This is like an object property. You'll see objects later on, but this is just a way you declare an object. So it has the key and the value kind of thing. So message is say hi, times is set to 4. So when you do greet.message, it's gonna try to access that, but greet is a message over here, right? Hello. But so this is gonna be updated. So the say hi. Sorry, it can't update it to say hi. Basically, this gives you an error. Yeah. This is just like trying to show like the way you can access stuff inside the object. So greet, this is your constant variable greet. And this is your object where it's like the key message. So you could do greet.message. And if you just print that, that would give you say hi. If you do greet.times, it would give you 4. It's like accessing things.
Is it greet.message say hi?
Oh no, this is just we're trying to set it to, we're trying to change it, but you can't because it's constant. Yeah, we're trying to update, but since it's a const, you can't update it. Yeah.
So it's the class line.
It's gonna like give an error because again, like just like before, right? You can't update the const variable. So if this was like let, you could update it. This would be updated to hello inside. Any other questions? No? Okay. Now we're moving on to types. So we have 3 types. We have numbers, strings, and booleans. How many of you are familiar with all 3 things, just in general? Okay, cool. So this is just again like let, we're just using let to declare our variables. So let workshop num equals 2. So workshop num is gonna be the integer 2. That's our numbers. This type numbers. Another type number is just 120. Well, length equals 120. So it can be like any integer. That's the type of number. Whereas string, you always put it in quotes. So that gives it denotes that it's a string. So let color equals blue. You can also like if you put blue 2 or whatever, that's still gonna be a string if you enclose it in the quotes. Whereas for numbers, you don't put it in quotes because it's a number. So let color equals blue and then let name equals ACM. Those are both strings because we have the quotes around those. So it can be letters, numbers, whatever you want, but you have to enclose it in the quotes to denote that it's a string type. And then Boolean is basically true or false. So let X equals true, let Y equals false. Any questions on the 3 types? Yeah. Yeah, a single quote can also work. Okay. So types continued more. So this is an object type. So like I mentioned it before, right? So this is how you define it. You have a const person because you're not gonna be updating it. So you just have const person, and then you have this key first name, which is set to John, and then last name set to Joe. So the syntax for objects is you have these curly braces, and inside of that, you can enclose as many different key value pairs you want. So you could add even address, or something, address, and then the value of the address or whatever. So over here, we have the first name, then colon to indicate the value being assigned to the first name. So whatever variable you have, and then the value for that key. So these are strings. Obviously, the values are strings over here. So your first name, if you do person dot first name, you're gonna get John. If you do person dot last name, you're gonna get Doe. And for person, like whenever you're doing objects, you put commas between each different thing. So between the first name and last name, you have to put the comma. Otherwise, it's gonna give you like an error, like a syntax error, basically. So any questions on the syntax or the way object is defined? Yeah. Yeah, pretty similar to a dictionary. Any other question? No? Okay. So then we have an array object. So over here, it's based instead of curly braces, we just have like it's kind of like a list. Think of it like a list. It's an array, right? Arrays list. So this is what we have is communities. So it's a const communities. It's a list. The list is indicated by the bracket type of things you see on the sides. So and in that you can have as many different number of objects you want, right? So you have hack, we have AI, we have cyber, and we have design. And you separate each thing by the commas again. Just like with the objects, you separate them by commas. In list or arrays, you also separate them by the commas. And these are just all strings. You could also have integers if you like. And also with arrays, you can also index into them. So this hack would be like index 0, AI 1, cyber 2, and design 3. Yes. For the object or the array? All right, yeah, just like in other languages, you could just do communities and then index into 0. That would give you hack. Okay, any other questions on arrays? No, okay, then for date, there's an object called date. So for that, you just do const date, and then this, just like, I don't know, how many of you are familiar with Java? Okay, pretty much a lot of you, but if you're not, this is just like a method type of thing. So it's like a built-in library type of thing. So just do new date, and then you can just specify the date as a string right there. So that's just like 10/18/2023. Oh my God, guess what date it is? Yeah. So this is how you define that date object. Just do new date and just put in your date. Any other questions? All good? Okay. So now we move on to operators. So operators just like your basic math, I guess, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So let's go through them. So we're studying x to 4, y to 2, a to 5, and b to 3. So when we're trying to do addition, I'm just logging these just so we're like printed out if you're running them. So what is happening? We're doing x plus y. What would that print out? It would be 6 because x is 4 and y is 2. They're both integers, so you can add them together and you're going to get the 6. And then for subtraction, kind of similar, just like math, you have x is 4, y is 2, so 4 minus 2. So what would be log is 2. And then for multiplication, you're just multiplying them. This is the star symbol, like on the 8 number, like if you do shift and 8, that's the multiplication operator when you're recording. So you just put that at variable x times y. 4 times 2 is 8. So that's what would be logged. And then for division, this is where it gets a bit different. So if you did x divided by y, since it's like perfect numbers, right? It's an even split. It's just 4 divided by 2. That's just 2. But what if it was like odd numbers? That gives you a decimal, right? So it's gonna be like a is 5, so 5 divided by 3. That's just gonna print you 1.66, like whatever decimal number it is. Any questions so far? Yes.
Sorry, this thing there, x plus y equals 69.
Yeah, well, when you're doing console.log, it's gonna actually print out like x plus y and then equals 6. I'm sorry, what?
Like, does the comma in
Yeah, it's kind of like in Python where you could just put two things together next to each other. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to it. Any other questions? No? Okay. So we have remainders and stuff too. So sorry, so for remainders, if you did X, the remainder symbol is actually this percentage one. That's how you get the remainder. So X was 4, Y is 2. So 4 mod 2. So that gives you 0, right? Because it's an even split. It's like there's no remainder. So the remainder is 0. And then if it was 5 mod 3, because A was 5 and B was 3, that would give you 2 because you have the remainder 2, right? Because 5 it's just like once, so that's 5, and then back, sorry, 3, 5 divided by 3, sorry, 3, and then the extra 2, that's the remainder 2. That's what it would give you. And then for increment, just you could do plus plus and then the variable. That just since it was 4, plus plus increments it by 1. So that just gives you 5 now. X is 5 over here. And then after that, if you do it again, that's going to be 6 because X was updated to 5 in the previous line. Now, if you increment it again, it's 6. The only difference between these two lines is you could do it the plus plus at the before the variable, or you could also do it after the variable. You can increment either way you like. And if you just printed X, then it's going to be 6 at that point. Any questions? No? Okay. And then decrement, basically decreasing by 1. So increment was increasing by 1. This time you're just subtracting 1. So similarly to increment, you can do minus minus before the variable. So minus minus X, that is just 5 now because X was 6 over here. Keep in mind, we're using the lines above right now. It's not going back to what was originally set. So right now, X was 6. So now if you do decrement, X is now 5. And then if you decrement again, it's now back to 4. Oh, and then exponents, we have x. To do exponents, you just do 2 stars. So for multiplication, it was 1. For exponent, you just do 2. So if it was like x to the y, so 4 to the second power, that's just 16. 4 times 4, basically. Any questions on any of the operators? No. Okay. So now it's time for you all to try to solve these. So if I can just have some people, you can discuss if you'd like, and then let's just have a raise of hands and give me an answer for these. So what would 8 plus 5 give you over there? Just raise your hand when you. And don't cheat. Don't cheat by looking at the slides. Try to do this by yourself. Anyone want to give it a shot? Okay, I see a lot of you are trying to do the other ones as well. So I guess just do all of them. Just go through the table. I give like 3 minutes. Let's just go through all of them, and then you can give me an answer after. Okay, who wants to give it a shot for the first one? Forward console.log 8 plus 5 print. Yeah. Yeah. Good job. Okay, so who wants to give it a shot for the second one? 8 plus the string 2. And would you like to explain why?
A string version of you. Because if you try to add a string in it would just convert the whole thing to a string.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Who wants to give it a shot for the third one? 8 plus 5 plus the string x.
13 minutes.
Yep. And would you like to explain why though?
Because 8 plus 5 are two integers, you have 13, but that is strings and x.
Yep. Good. Okay. Who wants to try out the next one? 2 minus the string 1.5. Yeah.
8x5.
Sorry. What was it?
8x5.
Oh, wait. Would you actually explain that?
Because it just adds, well, it like combines the 8 and the string with x,
Mm-hmm.
and then it combines that with the 5.
Yep. Okay. What was the question? So the x, when we put it in quotes, right, it's a string. So whenever you add a number to a string, it always concatenates it. So it puts it together like as a string. It's not a number. Yeah.
You add like what you do that, but it's 8 plus x plus 5 plus 2.
8 plus 5 plus x plus.
Like the one you did.
Yeah. This one?
And then just add one another.
After 5, just add a 2.
Yeah, would it be like 8x 2 or would it?
Because it's like a string, and then you're still adding like an integer, still like a string. It goes like left to right. Okay. Who wants to give a shot for 2 minus the string 1.5? Oh, you actually did that right. So, okay, so 0.5, and then for the next one, 8. Yeah, explain this one. Okay, so what happens is 2 is an integer, right? And then you're subtracting a string. Technically, the only time it concatenates is when you're doing the addition. When you're adding, it treats it as a string. So you add 8 plus x as a string, but whenever you're doing subtraction, it kind of converts the string to like an integer. So it's like 2 minus like the actual number 1.5. So you get 0.5. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes.
What is this a letter?
2 minus a letter.
Like, for example, X.
2 minus x. I'm not sure. I think wait, like a string x, right? Okay. That would probably give you an error because like you can't subtract a integer and a string. It's like two incorrect types you're trying to do subtraction with. Yes.
The 1.5 is 1, but it just be 1.
Yeah. Okay. Are we good? Okay, so who wants to give a shot for where?
Yeah, if the string is not a numerical value, that's the like letter, you want to just give an error one?
Yeah, because it would be two different types that you can't subtract.
If there was a character in the instead of a string, would it be possible to subtract something?
If the character is like defined about like you mean like without a string, it's just like 2 minus x? Or
2 minus the string x.
2 minus the string x? Okay, that's gonna be like error because it's like an integer is trying to subtract a string. You can't do it that way. Wait, what? Oh, do characters exist in JavaScript? Well, yeah. Okay. And you want to give a shot for the second to the last one? 8 times the string -2. Yeah. And would you like to explain?
Because it does a type conversion on -2. So it
Mhm.
puts it into your -2 and 8 times -2.
Yep. Yeah. And then for the last one, anyone want to go give it a shot? Five plus true. Yeah. So it would return true. Do you have to explain here? No?
Okay, I mean, it's zero, it's all in one.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so the Boolean true converts to the number. So what you get is this because true is 1 and false would be 0. So if it was 5 plus false, it would just be 5 because 5 would convert to a 0. And since it's true, true is 1. So it's 5 plus 1, which is 6.
Does the multiplication do the exact same thing as subtraction where everything is converted to the integer?
If it's like an integer inside the string, yeah. Okay, moving on. Anyone want to give it a shot? What do you think will be printed when I do console.log 5 equals the string 5? You can kind of look at the meme to try to give you a hint if you'd like.
If it was not, it's
Anyone want to give it a shot? Anyone want to give it a shot? Where would console.log 5 equals the string 5 give you? Okay. Did y'all have enough time to discuss? Or can someone from this side in the back or center table give it a shot? Anyone on this side want to give it a shot? Great. Yeah, go ahead.
That's true because the values are the same.
Yeah, so it's gonna be true because the integer 5 is a 5 and the string is a 5. So it when you have two equals, it just compares the value itself. So it's gonna be true. Whereas if you had 3, sorry, this is kind of like all together, but it's like 3 equal signs next to each other. If you did console.log 5 equals the string 5, that's gonna be false because if you have 3 equal signs, that basically checks the value and the type. Whereas if you had only 2 equals, it only checks the value. It just kind of combined it when we were yeah, we just like use this website where we type our code for slides and it just put it all together. But it's like 3 equals next to each other. Yeah. So any questions on this? No? Okay, so we'll move on to objects. So over here, we've defined an object called organization, where it has the name ACM UCSD. The age is 5. And hack school is this kind of function where it'll just log a JavaScript workshop. So this is like a error function. We'll cover this afterwards, but just treat this as a function called hack school. Okay. So it's gonna log JavaScript workshop. So the way to access objects is to call the object and then dot the property name. So if I did organization dot name and set it to this const variable called my name. My name is going to be organization.name, which is ACM UCSD. So when I try to log my name in the next line, it's going to print ACM UCSD. And then another way is just to use brackets. So if I did a variable called org name, set it to organization and like brackets just to kind of access it. And I have to specify the property name type, right? So which is name. If I put name in here, it's gonna do organization, search for the key name in there, and then it's gonna return the value. So it's gonna print ACM UCSD. So if I change this name to age, it's gonna do 5. If I did hack school, that's gonna do the function just like console.log JavaScript workshop. Any questions on accessing objects? So you just have 2 ways. You can just use the dot notation or the bracket notation. Nope. Okay. So we'll what about modifying them, right? What if you just want to update the value, let's say age or something, whatever, you want to update it to a different name, right? So over here, we're trying to update the name from ACM UCSD to hack. So what we do with the dot notation is similarly organization.name to refer to that value, right? That key, the name key. And over here, we're just updated it to hack. So now if you did console.log organization.name, it's going to print hack now. No, it's no longer ACM UCSD. It's updated to hack. Similarly, just for bracket notation, instead of dot, you just do bracket and then ask the key age. You update it from 5 to 6. So now if you try to log that, it's just going to print 6. Any questions on modifying that way? No, okay. And then lastly, we have where the methods, right? So if you remember, hack school was a method. So if you did organization.hackschool, it's gonna do whatever you define inside this method. So if we just have console.log JavaScript workshop, that's what it's gonna do. It's just gonna log JavaScript workshop. If you had something like, let's say, age +1 or whatever inside, it's gonna update age as well. So whatever you do inside that function, it's what's gonna happen when you call this line organization.hackschool. Any questions on objects? Yeah.
Is the arrow like the actual syntax?
Yeah, it's part of the syntax, which you'll kind of cover pretty soon. We're going to talk about arrow functions. Okay. So moving on to loops, arrays, and functions. So we have a while loop, kind of similar. You just have index being 0, then you loop through with the while loop where index, well, as long as index is less than 4, what we're going to do is log that index and increment it. So over here it's 0, and then you increment it, so it increments by 1. So you have 1, so index is 1. 1 is still less than 4, so you log that, so it's 1, and then similarly you keep going until you reach the end where index is now greater than 4, like or equal to 4. So it no longer meets this condition, and you just end that while loop. So this one will print 0, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, and for loops, this is just kind of similar to JavaScript, Java, just like this. For let I equal 0, that's where you're starting off at. Then this is your condition, I is less than 4, and this is your incrementer. So what you want to do, increase I by 1 each time, and just logging it. Just logging I. So similarly to the while loop, that's just a way you write it in the for loop. So it still is print 0, 1, 2, and 3. And this is another type of for loops, which is called for each loops. So let's say we have a array called colleges. That's just all the colleges at UCSD. And this for each loop is going to go through the list of colleges. So for I of colleges, it basically like indexes into that array and just kind of prints it. So it's going to print each college in that list. So it's going to print Ravel, Muir, Marshall, Warren, ERC, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Okay. And over here, kind of similar. If it was just a string instead of an array, what would happen? It kind of goes loops through that string. So if you did for I of ACM, then it just prints out each individual character of that string. So it's going to print out A, C, and the space that UCSD part. Any questions on loops? Any of them? While, for, or for each? For ACM UCSD, it's gonna be like it's gonna be multiple lines actually. So yeah, when you're logging it, because if you're logging it each time, right, it's gonna be new lines for each of them. Yeah, each one, because it's just you're printing Ravel and then you're going back to the loop, you're looping again. And always feel free to test this later on at home. Like you can always type this into an editor and just like run it to see. You can also change values just to get a better understanding of these concepts as well. Okay, so moving on to arrays. This is like an empty array. You just have the brackets. You have nothing inside, so it's empty. And then you can have like a numbers array, so just all integers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can also have strings, so like ACM, UCSD, hack, anything. And also JavaScript allows you to do like different types within one array. So you can have like the number 8, you can have the string JavaScript workshop, you can have Boolean true, you can have like decimal integer as well, whatever you want. The common thing with arrays, the syntax is brackets and divide each thing by a comma, like separate each item with a comma. Yeah, and then this is just an array object. People, so you have the brackets, the opening and closing bracket over here, and then inside you have your objects. So this is one object, this is another object. These are just all of our hack people. They're also here if you know. But yeah, so you have your objects just like we've talked about objects before, but you just close them in brackets to make it an array object. And whenever after you have your objects, make sure you have the commas to separate the objects. Okay. So any questions on arrays, by the way? Either this slide or this slide. Okay, so moving on to functions. Functions are basically used to perform an action. You can have arguments or inputs like parameters type of thing. And you can obviously you can return a value and assign functions to variables as well. Yep. So let's take a look. So the syntax for functions is kind of like this. You have const, let's just have it const, right? So you have the name of your function. I just called it my function over here. And then you have the equal sign that assigns it. So you on the left side is your declaration of the function called my function. And then you are having the equal sign to like assign that function to these arguments. So you're going to have argument 1 and argument 2. And then you have your curly braces, and inside the curly braces is whatever the function does. Yeah. So an example is we have a list of colleges again, and we just have this function called get colleges. We just want to get all the colleges in that list. Okay, so we have this parameter or argument called colleges list. And inside the function, what we want to do is have the size equal to 0, and then basically loop through. We have a for each loop. We're looping through the list wherever is passing into the parameter. So we have this argument parameter college list. So we have that. We loop through that, and we log each thing and increase the size by 1 to just keep a count of how many items there are in that list. And at the end of this function, we just return the size. So over here, when you actually call that function, what we do is num colleges equals get colleges, and you're passing in the list we've created above. So the colleges UCSD, that's passed in. You call this function get colleges. So colleges list is referencing to this list of colleges. And now you loop through and print out, just like how we did before. And we're just logging the size. So it returns the size, so that's gonna be like 8. Because there are 8 colleges. So when you log the number of colleges, it's going to be 8. Any questions? No? Okay, so this would be like the output when you run it. This is what we printed in the terminal. It's gonna, because you're logging each list, each item in the list, so it reprints well, it's inside the function, and at the end, you're logging the size, which was returned from that function. Okay, so now it's your turn. What you're gonna do is create an array of random sentences. You can have any sentences you want, so just create an array, have a bunch of random sentences in there, and just use a function and just loop through the array. You can modify it by either adding stuff to that list or removing stuff from that list. And you just want to have a counter as well. Just keep a count of how many sentences were modified and just return that value from that function. Cool. Yeah, so you can do this in VS Code. So if you have your GitHub, so pull up your GitHub from last time. And basically what you want to do is on your GitHub account, you can also like sync the fork if you haven't updated your solutions, but you can do that later. Don't worry about it. We can teach you later on if you have questions. But honestly, just go to VS Code, create some file, and just start typing and do your function. Just do activity 1 .js for JavaScript. So just create a file and name it whatever you want, .js, to indicate it's a JavaScript file, and just type your code.
I had to add I did the sneaky set putting the feedback and you can refresh.
No, no, it's because I was like, I'm Zoom on.
It was already added, I just needed to refresh.
I'm gonna get that all in like a minute or two more, and then I'll go over the solution. I think solutions are okay because I added like parameters and everything. Added parameters like arguments and everything because like we covered. So I added like everything as much as I could from all the slides.
Oh.
I'll just go over it in like a minute or two. 1 minute. Because we have time.
For my the other activity, how long, you know, the other activity is like, how long, like, I might just play it off.
We're starting a, yeah, we don't have time. Yeah, we had to use one note.
Yeah, it's Node and.
Yeah. We can do that, or just like click the run button on VS Code. Good. So.
Ready?
Yes,
I've been preparing your whole life.
I have.
Drop that.
My whole life. My whole life is dependent on this.
I think honestly, it's not bad. Like, I think like when I tell like the activity is something, so you could probably cover that activity in like.
Yeah, go slow.
I'll give them like 6 or even, but kind of play it off at the time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we started a little late, so you can, but let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up kind of now, so I can go with the solution though. Why is it being slow?
Oh, you have it on, oh, yeah.
Okay. Should be fine. All right, I know it wasn't exactly enough time, but just so we can keep moving on, let's kind of go over the solution that we came up with. So what we have is we've created this thing, variable called sentence, we have the array. What we have is we have 4 sentences in there. So we have welcome to Hack. This is Hack School. I'm learning JavaScript and ACM post full of like this is actually one thing like because you're closing it. So we have these sentences. We have our array of sentences called sent. And what we want to do is, if you remember, we wanted to keep. Can everyone like get back? Okay, cool. I'm just gonna go over the solution that we came up with just because of timing, and so we can cover other content that we need to cover. But yeah, feel free to work on your solution later on as well afterwards. So this is just our solution. What we have is this variable called sent. We have these sentences. Welcome to Hack. This is Hack School. I'm learning JavaScript and ACM post cool events. Okay, so we have our array of these sentences. And we've set our count to 0 because what we wanted to do was keep a count of how many sentences were modified and returned that value in the function, right? So we have our counter to 0 and we have our function here now. So what our function does, we have these arguments, the arguments we talked about, right? So in this case, we have sentences list, the action, and sentence. So I'll cover what's happening inside the function by using these examples. So over here, we have this variable sentences error. We're calling the function sentences with the sent, like which is our array of sentences, right? So what happens is, since we didn't pass in the other arguments, you get an error basically. So if I were to run this, what happens for that one is it gives you error. Make sure arguments are sentence list, either add or remove, and string to add or remove or null. And why is that? That's because in our code, we've logged that message. So if you walk through, if you only had the sentences list passed in, then what's going to happen is if you check this condition, if action was removed, well, we don't have an action, right? So you don't go inside that if condition. So what we do is go inside this else condition. And in that, we check if action equals add. Well, we didn't have an action, so we don't go into that if condition. And for else if, you also don't go into the else if because we didn't have an action defined. So you go into this else. And what we wanted to do was just log this error message. So that's what happens. And when you run it, that's what you get logged over there. Any questions on running that example? No? Okay. So the next one we have is sentences add, and we're passing in sent, the array that we defined above with all the sentences. We have the action add, and we have this sentence, I love hack events. What we wanted to do is basically add the sentence, I love hack events, to our array sent. Okay. So what happens when we walk through, since we have add, we don't go into this if condition. Instead, we go in else. Action is add, yes. And we have a sentence parameter. So we go inside this if, and sent.push. Push is just like you're pushing into that array. So you're pushing that sentence into that array. So you're just adding it at the end. And we're incrementing our count, which was originally 0 to 1, because now we've modified our sentence, like our array. Okay. So now we have one modification, so our count is 1, and we're just logging the sentences list now. So whatever the list is at that point. So if you check when it ran, what happens is we have welcome to Hack, which we had above. This is Hack School. I'm learning JavaScript, ACM post school events, and this newly added sentence, I love hack events. Yeah. And then for our next example, what we wanted to do is the action remove. So remove, and we wanted to remove, this is Hack School from there. So from this list, we remove that. So we have the others remaining afterwards. So what happens is, since action is removed, we check is action is removed and sentence. We also have the sentence. So what we do is loop through the sentences list. So you're looping through that array, and well, this time you're decrementing, like you're just going backwards, basically. And then splice is something you can learn more about it in our textbook. Just because of time, I'm not covering it, but basically it splices a list from index I, whatever index you're at, to the next. So you're splicing it, just like shrinking that list to check. And after that, that line basically removes that sentence, whatever sentence is, because that's where I was at. So you remove that index. So remove this is Hack School, and you've also incremented your counter. So now your counter is 2. So now if you check from that example, for remove, your count is at 2, and that sentence is gone. Like you only have welcome to hack, I'm learning JavaScript, and exam host cool events. And then for last one, we have the action remove, and we have null. So we haven't specified any sentence this time. Okay, so now we have removed, but we don't really have a sentence. So we go here, and since it's not add, we go check this else if condition, since action is removed, and this exclamation sentence means there's no sentence, like sentence is empty or null. So that's what it is. So it meets this condition. So we go inside here and then we pop. Pop basically does is just like pop it off of the list. So just removes it. And you increment your counter to 1. So now we're at count 3 and we're just logging the list. So if you check here now, our count is 3 and we've just popped off the one of them. So now we have these 3 sentences. Okay. And any questions real quick? You'll see this solution, and if you have any questions about it later on, you can come to our office hours and we'll answer your questions about it as well. Okay, if not, then we'll move on to our next part.
All right. Hello, does it work? Can you guys hear me? All right. So next up, we're going to move to arrow functions. Those are a pretty cool feature of the JavaScript. And here we saw regular functions right here. You just have the name, you pass in num1, num2, your parameters, and you return the addition because it's an add function. And so now if we add arrow functions, they're like an anonymous way to do it. Usually it's shorter. And so you see this little arrow here, same thing. Pass in your arguments, num1, num2, and you return num1 plus num2. So these, both of them, you would call them the exact same way, and you would return, both of them will return 14 if you pass in a 5 and a 9. So a cool thing about arrow functions is they allow the function to refer to the object it was defined. So here, if we have an object, like we saw previously, we have hello, which is associated with the regular function, and greeting, which is associated with the arrow function. Both of them essentially do the same thing. They just print this. But if we call object.hello, this one will print the whole object. Whereas if we do object.greeting, this one will return the window, and it will print the window that you're in. So now that we're done with functions, we're going to move on to more fun stuff, the asynchronous code. So this is a callback. It's a pretty cool feature where basically what you do is you pass in a function as an argument to another function. So this comes in useful. So for example, right here, we have our callback function, which is the call me, and we're passing it into the greet function. So here we pass in Nikhil and call me, and then we'll print hello plus the name, and then the callback. So you see first it'll print hello, Nikhil, and then it'll execute that callback. And it has the exact same name as the one that you pass it in as a parameter. And you'll say, call me back. So now some asynchronous code. So one problem that you have with if you have functions that take a really long time to execute. For example, in this here, we're using fetching data from an API. So here we're fetching data from an API, setting it to data, and then we're going to process this data. So here it is on the right. It's just a big for loop that does a bunch of iteration. It's just wasting time to simulate something that would take a while. And then after we're returning this data, and here we're just printing the data. So if it takes a lot of time, then it'll block the UI and you won't be able to interact with it. And so a way to get around this is by using asynchronous code. So one way to use this is promises. So I like to think of promises as like a lottery ticket, right? So you go to the lottery, you get a ticket, and then after you don't know if you won or not. but it's in a pending state right here. So, and then after, when you cache it in, you'll find out if you won or if you didn't win. So right here on the bottom, you see a promise has a state and a result. So he starts at pending and undefined. And after within your promise, here you can see we're resolving it, or we can reject it. And if you resolve it, then it'll make it, the state will become fulfilled, and it'll have the value. The result will be whatever value you're passing it into. So here, when we resolve it, it's food. And then after, if we reject it, the state becomes rejected. And then after, what we're returning is an error. Any questions before I go into examples for promises? No? All right. So here, going back to the lottery example. So right here on the right, we're defining our promise. You're creating a new promise, passing resolve and reject. And the way I made it is just a random number generator. If it's higher than 95% chance, resolve, you've won, and the promise is resolved. If not, error, better luck next time. The set timeout is just to make it so it takes longer to go through, so that we're simulating asynchronous code. And then here on the left, this is to consume the promise. So what we're going to see after is a .then and .catch are ways to consume a promise. .then is if you're successful, and for .catch is if you're catching the error. So at the lottery here, once it gets consumed, we'll do .then, and this will only be executed if the promise was successful, and it will be we'll log the error if it was unsuccessful. So here's another example of a promise. So this one, we create a sentence, hack is the best. If the length of the sentence is less than 10, we'll resolve it. If not, we'll reject and throw an error. So here, this is then catch, as I said, to consume a promise. So here's another function, right? It's called find user. What we're doing is we're returning a promise. Similar, we create a random number. If it's more than 0.5, we're resolving it, saying that Charlie is 20 years old. And then if not, we say we could not find the user. So this is a function find user that returns a promise. And we're going to use then catch to consume that promise. So we call find user. Remember, it returns us a promise. If it was successful, then what we're going to do, we're going to print this user. We're going to print the user's name. And then, so a good thing about thens is that we can chain them back to back. So we can put a bunch of thens and do a chain of functions that we're going to do if it's successful. And at the very end, we have catch. And then we'll catch it if it was unsuccessful. So if we throw an error in any of those, the catch is the one that's going to catch the error. So here you see that what we're chaining it is we're chaining it with an age function, which is going to age the person by 5 years old and say print their age. So 25 now. Any questions real quick? Yeah?
So it's like promise like
It's yeah. Oh, sorry.
yeah, I don't know what that's saying.
So basically a promise is like an object that you're promising that it's going to be a value later on. So for a while, when it's being executed, it's as pending, so it's nothing so far. But then after, you're promising that, like the lottery ticket, you're promising that either you're going to win or you're not going to win anything. So it's a special object that will be determined in the future. Then catch will determine what you do based on the result. So in the promise, you declare inside the promise here. It was right here. So inside the promise, we have the executor, right, which is what you have inside, and this will determine whether or not it was successful or not. And then with then catch, you decide what you do based on if it was successful or not. Does that make sense? Any other questions? No? All right. So moving on. So one thing is when you have a bunch of then statements, then functions, it can get pretty messy if you have a lot. So this is where it comes in with async and await. So async is a keyword that you can add at the beginning of the function right here to let it know that it's an asynchronous function and that it's going to return a promise. If you don't return a promise, what it'll just do is it'll just return a promise that's set as resolved with the value of what you're returning. But the great thing about async is that it lets us use the await keyword. So the await keyword, so here, let me show you the example. We're creating a new promise, set a timeout so that it takes a little longer, and it'll resolve as found. And await, basically, it halts the execution of the code so that it'll so is found will be put as searched once the promise is resolved. So basically, await, you can only use it in async code, in an async function, and it halts the execution of the code so that it can be set to whatever the promise's result was. Any questions on that? I'm gonna go over an example. So if we go back to the first example that we had at the beginning, this is copy and pasted. This is exactly what it was with synchronous code. And so now if we use what we learned to turn it into async logic, so the two functions on the right, both of them are asynchronous. And now instead of returning the data, they're returning a promise, which means that on the left side with our main function, we're still calling fetch data. And then after we can chain .then to do the processing of the data. And then after we can just print it. So yeah, so we're calling fetch data from API async, which will return data. And then we're passing that into the process data async once it's been resolved. And then here we can catch any error using that. So I know this was a lot and it's pretty confusing. So there's a quick activity. It's gonna be, we're gonna come help you guys. So basically we want to create an asynchronous function where someone gets a typing speed of 80 words per minute if they practice. So your job is to create a function that's gonna return a promise, and then you're gonna have to consume this promise correctly. So if the person practiced, then we're gonna resolve the value with their new words per minute. If they didn't practice, we're gonna reject that with an error. And then after, based on whether or not the promise was fulfilled or not, did we reach our goal or did we fail? So let's see what time it is. I'll give you guys like 10-15 minutes to work on this, and we'll walk around and help you guys out.
Yeah, it's just.
Rice. If you just like put the bottom rice on it, right, we'll just figure out the rice, right? But the sin is more like, you put it right where you are, and then you'll go around and like, maybe follow, that's not right. And then when the rice is done, you go back to the rice top. So basically under the scheduling stuff, where they're. Or what is waiting, was it like, that's about 800. Yeah. So, it's part of the area. Maybe not. Then what you would do is you would put back the data and you start out and just 10 seconds, I think that we can set it. So we go and it's a secret. It's part of like doing you see like, you know, meetings. They're like, oh, God. Yeah, so hey, I'll be back to you. It's something that is going to involve your cost or if you want like to make that so it's kind of how we do it. But it's kind of like the way to describe it is like with smart all that we're going to do is how we deal with objectives and we Where do you want to start? So say you're like the right, and then you're like the price with the you also more with you. So then. Yeah. Really. Yeah. So it was so a lot of stuff here. And like set aside.
All right. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna go over the solution right now. If I can have everyone's attention real quick. All right. Let me pull that up. All right, so this is the solution that we came up with. Is it big enough? Can you guys see? Yeah. All right. So here we're creating a creating a async function called improve typing, and we're passing in did practice. And basically what it does is going to return a promise. And based on whether or not you did practice, let me get that out. If you did practice, we're going to resolve that promise and pass in 80 as the value. And if we did not practice, we'll reject it and throw an error. And then in here, this is how you would call the function. You would pass in improve typing. We pass in true because we did practice for good students. And since we did pass in true, then it's going to resolve with a value of 80. And so it's going to go in the then. If we passed in false, it would have went in the catch and console logged the error. But because we did practice, then I have a typing speed of result words per minute. And result right here gets set to whatever we resolve. So that's a cool thing. So if say we resolve and we pass in 80, that's what the promise returns a value of 80. And so when we call then, it'll pass in as a result, and that way, that's how it can print the result is 80. That was a little confusing. Do you guys have any questions on that? We'll give you a little bit to. Yeah. All right, I'll do that real quick. All right, so moving on, next part of the agenda, Node.js and DOMs. So can I have everyone's attention real quick? So Node.js, you guys, most of you should have downloaded it already. If you were able to run it on your local machine, and that was using Node.js, sorry, basically an open source environment, and we can use it to download new packages using npm install. So some of the packages of modules we're going to use Express, that'll be one of our workshop, Mongoose for MongoDB, and Socket.io and Passport, different npm modules that we can install. So it'll just be npm install and whatever the module that you want. And then DOM, those are document object models. Those are another cool features. Basically, it helps you represent the structure as a tree. And you're going to have here, you're going to have your element, the attribute, and the text. All of those are going to be nodes within that tree. And what it helps us do is we can use JavaScript to actually modify the HTML elements. So that way we can use logic to modify what is going to be displayed on the page. And actually that's it. So this is our feedback form. If you guys can go here, take our